Hello, it's Creepy Creeps. Today I am covering for Midnight Creeps on his channel for a video today which is top 5 horror games ever made. Now, what makes horror games so different to movies is, while movies we watch people fight for survival, we don't really get the full horror and emotions they are feeling. However, horror games, it is us who is fighting for survival, so we get the feels of fear, dread and uncertainty, and that's what makes horror games so good. But however though, these 5 games truly capture the feel and atmosphere of horror and truly make us want to hide under our covers at night. Number 5. Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark came out in 1993 during a period where horror experienced an identity crisis in gaming. During the 1990s, people didn't know how horror games were supposed to be. Instead, they were merely gothic point-and-click adventures, but the issue was they weren't scary. However though, Alone in the Dark wasn't that. Yes, it was a gothic survival point-and-click game, however, it was scary. While today it does look very clunky, at the time it was very scary, and a lot of people call this the game that started survival horror. The plot follows a young reporter called Edward Carmody who goes to an abandoned house where a man committed suicide and must try and put the guy's soul at rest. While the game hasn't aged as well and the controls are painfully bad. At the time though, this game was amazing and was the stepping stone for survival horror, and so I believe it deserves to be number 5. Number 4. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Amnesia: The Dark Descent followed a young man named Daniel who woke up in an abandoned castle with no memory. The point of the game was Daniel trying to solve the mystery of who he was before his amnesia, while also trying to evade scary monsters around the mansion. However though, the reason why this game was so amazing was because of the very immersive environments, which really helped bring in the immersion and the terror of this game. The gothic setting was a truly beautiful backdrop for the game. Also, the monsters were damn terrifying, as Amnesia didn't give you the access to weapons. Instead, you had to hide behind objects in order to survive against the monsters, and if you were too close, you would meet your death. And out of all the games on this list, this one's probably the best for narrative. This one has such a great narrative with so much lore and so much backstory to it. This game had numerous awards and critical acclaim, and what makes this game so amazing was it was only an indie game. However though, the game did release another sequel in 2013, Amnesia, a Machine for Pigs. However, that's a piece of shit, and I'm not going to talk about that. Number 3. Outlast. Outlast follows a freelance investigator called Miles Upshaw, who receives an anonymous tip from a whistleblower which talks about bad things going on in Mount Massive Asylum to the patients. Desperate to find out, Miles goes in, only to find such horrors. What makes Outlast so great is the truly physical side to the horror. Instead of having Outlast be someone with a gun and powerful and OP, instead, Miles is just a normal guy who's just fighting for survival by running against the many crazed inmates in the asylum. And there are so many inmates and crazy inmates, such as Chris Walker, the muscle of the game, and Richard Treguard, a really messed up guy who you do not want to meet, and also, spoiler, he cuts off your fingers. However, like Amnesia, Outlast has a good lore behind it, as you find out various documents about the asylum and its story. Outlast also, instead of to see in the dark, you have camera, which in night vision to help navigate through the asylum. However, though, the issue is it relies on batteries, and they're hard to find, and of course they run out. Outlast is an amazing game, and while you could argue the sequel and the DLC Whistleblower is great, it's nowhere as good as the actual original game. While it is very repetitive at times, Outlast is still a revolutionary game to horror, and also, you could argue it gave Resident Evil and Silent Hill the idea to go first person. Number 2. Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 takes place in a completely different part of the town of Silent Hill which we knew about in the first game. Instead, it focuses on a different protagonist named James Sunderland, who gets a message from his late wife to come and meet him in Silent Hill, only for him to, when he arrives, to experience a lot of horrors. What makes Silent Hill 2 so much better than its predecessor was that it actually made itself more of a unique game. You could admit that the first game was a clone of Resident Evil, while Silent Hill 2, it was not afraid to actually make itself its own thing. Instead of Resident Evil's physical horror, Silent Hill added in psychological horror, which was very new at the time, and the town and all the monsters he faced represented James' psychological state of mind. And also, you got to know the real truth behind the death of James's wife. There's also a lot of great enemies in this game, such as the iconic Pyramid Head, who is by far the greatest horror villain in survival horror history, who represents James's psychological state, and he is downright terrifying with that shape of the pyramid on his head and his iconic weapon. While this game is amazing, I would say the only flaw with this game is the controls, but they are still an improvement over the original Silent Hill. However, though, Silent Hill is a sequel that expanded on the original game and also was something else. And overall, while not the best horror game ever made, it is by far the scariest game I have ever played. Number 1. Resident Evil 4. 6 years since the Raccoon City incident, Leon S. Kennedy, a survivor, is now the President's bodyguard for him and his family. When Ashley, the President's daughter, is kidnapped by a mysterious cult, it leads Leon to finding her in a mysterious Spanish village. When he's there though, he visits the village's crazed inhabitants. While you could argue the first one is better because the first Resident Evil started the survival horror craze, you could argue it was Resident Evil 4 which actually which actually founded two important styles to video gaming. It re-revolutionized the horror genre, and it also gave birth to the third-person shooter genre due to its fixed over-the-shoulder camera angles. While the past two Resident Evil games such as Code Veronica and Zero were criticized for not adding anything new and still having fixed camera angles, Resident Evil 4 went all out, adding a game that married well both action and horror, with a fixed over-the-shoulder camera angle, and instead of camera angles, it was just fixed over-the-shoulder third-person action mixed in with some very good horror. The enemies were downright terrifying, such as Chainsaw Guy, who just runs at you and can kill you with a one-hit kill, and also those downright regenerators, which I swear will give you absolute nightmares. Also, the action was way better than all the other installments, giving us some really intelligent enemies along with the action. Instead of just slow-moving zombies, these were just infected villagers, and these enemies were smart. In the other games, you could argue if you went to another room, you would be safe. However, in this game, they climb up ladders, stairs, they hunt you down, they do not stop chasing after you, and they are downright intelligent. But also, while you could argue they've improved the enemies, they've also added better and powerful weapons, such as machine guns, SMGs, and etc. Also, instead, in the old games, whenever you're cornered by enemies, you're pretty much doomed. However, in this game, you could just kick the enemies out of the way, but don't worry, the enemies are way harder. While I do understand this game may be criticized for the sequels that follow, however though, for what it is, Resident Evil 4 is a masterpiece, even with Ashley included. That annoying piece of shit. However though, Resident Evil 4 is so good, it's not just the best horror game ever made, it is also one of the greatest games ever made. And at the time, back in 2005, its release, it was nominated and won loads of Game of the Year awards and praise, even receiving praise for its voice acting, which if you're a Resident Evil nerd like me, is very funny. Thank you for watching the top 5, and I'm sorry I did stutter at times. I do really love doing these videos, but I have so many thoughts come into my head I actually stumble. Anyway, make sure to follow my channel, Creepy Creeps, and you're probably wondering why there isn't content on there. The real truth is that I haven't been able to do any yet, but I swear I will try and get to do some content on my own channel, because me and Midnight Creeps are together to help do both channels, and it's mainly Midnight Creep who does all the work. He does all the editing stuff, I just do recordings every now and then. So please subscribe to his awesome channel as well. While he doesn't have a lot of content yet, with more support we can make better, longer and lengthier videos. Anyway though, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.